Today, I want to share with you the best 6 books that I've read over the course of 2021. Hi, I'm Laura, and welcome to my channel where I talk about my life as a PM, my life working in tech, and other computer science related advice. I've read about 20 or so books working on my 21st and 22nd right now, and I've had a lot of good reads over the past year. There were a few standout books though that I really just couldn't stop talking about or really wanted to share with some people. I'll be sharing 3 nonfiction and 3 fiction books alike, so hopefully everyone gets something that they're a little bit interested in. The first book on a highlight is called This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends, The Cyber Arms Weapons Race by Nicole Perlroth. Now, this is a book that informs you about the dangers, perils, and also historical upbringing of the cybersecurity space, particularly with respect to cyber weapons. It also tells you about key players and global influencers that have brought the cyber weapons market to its current existence and state of nature. All I can say about this book is wow. I have a little bit of security background working adjacent to security right now, and I try to stay informed as best as I can on security related topics. This book still really blew my mind though and taught me a decent bit about offensive security and the depth at which some of these attacks have been happening and the overall destruction that any of these attacks could cause at any given moment. Even if you're not the biggest security person or not the biggest nonfiction person, I would still highly encourage that you give this a shot and try and read it. It is a pretty thick book and lengthy read, but it really does read more like a thriller than it does an actual nonfiction book. Nicole does a really great job of breaking down some of these technical definitions into non-jargon terms and make sure that this kind of reading is accessible to any person regardless of their technical background. About the author, Nicole Perlroth is a New York Times journalist who has been writing about cybersecurity for a while, so this kind of summarizes all of her findings into one neat book, and I really learned a lot from it. The second book I want to give a shout out to is called Invisible Woman by Caroline Criado Perez. This book, Invisible Woman, showcases how women have been routinely disregarded when it comes to matters of data in our intensely data-driven world. This book is packed with tons of data and tons of information, and it reads a little bit more like a lengthy extended research paper than it does an actual book. Honestly, I have to say that I didn't love this book while I was reading it because the chapters were pretty dense and it just took a really long time to wrap my head around all the information that was presented in a given chapter. The chapters, also because they are dense, do jump around a frequent bit, so if you aren't a fan of that, then this writing style may not be the best for you. However, I still thought the information in this book was incredibly valuable, so I pushed through reading it, and I'm really glad that I did. Caroline Perez does a great job examining a world that isn't designed for women just because we aren't there in the data. This goes from examining daily life to public life, the workplace, understanding the healthcare system and how entangled that is with women, and also aspects like disaster recovery. The author does a great job of packing all this information into a short 200-page book, but despite the shorter read, it took me about a week to get through the whole book, but that was with pretty dedicated and determined reading times. The last book I want to highlight in the nonfiction category is Getting to Zero by Jason Gaddis. Getting to Zero is all about understanding your interpersonal conflicts and how to better work through these conflicts within your daily life. I've always been a conflict avoidant person, and shout out to all my other conflict avoidant folks out there, and conflict has always been just a scary negative emotion for me. Jason Gaddis breaks down conflict into what it is, how to actually resolve it, and then general do's and don'ts. I'm honestly not fully done with this book, so maybe my opinions and thoughts may change, but I think that this book, Getting to Zero, is a great example of one of the better self-help books out there. I've been trying to do a lot of self-improvement and self-development during this year, and I can already tell that Getting to Zero is going to be a great part in my self-development journey. What I love about this book though, and why it stands out to other self-help books for me, is that Jason Gaddis actually includes different exercises at the end of each chapter to examine your overall thinking, behavior, and current way of approaching conflict, as well as how to start shaping it into a more healthy view. I am always one of those people that is looking for how to actually apply concepts from a self-help book into my daily life, and this was kind of the perfect answer that I was looking for. So if you're one of those people that love self-help books, you're conflict avoidant, or you're also just on a self-development journey like I am, then pick up this book and see where it takes you. Now let's move on to fiction. I took a huge break from reading fiction books ever since around high school, and that was just a required reading anyways. I always gravitated for the nonfiction books as an adult because I always thought that that would be more productive and a better use of my time, but really reading fiction is awesome, and I'm glad that I introduced more fiction into my reading catalog this year. The first fiction book on my highlight is called The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X. Arpan. This is one of those books that I picked up on a whim because I actually didn't know much about it besides just 1 or 2 reviews that I read about it on Goodreads. This book focuses on a young artist named Lei who quickly loses her mother at the very beginning of the book and kind of follows her self-discovery process of dealing with the trauma and understanding her family history. Driven by the loss of her mother, Leia undergoes a very confusing time in her life and discovers a whirlwind of romance, understanding her culture and family, and takes you on a very interesting journey with her. Emily X. R. Pan, the author, does a fantastic job of tying in dualistic themes to keep you engaged and wondering what's next in the book. I was generally searching for more books from Asian authors, and I'm really glad that I stumbled upon this one. The Astonishing Color of After feels a little bit more like a young adult read than a mature fiction, but I still really enjoyed it, and the chapters are super short, so it keeps you wanting to flip to the next one and see where Leia goes next. The second fiction book is called Hail Mary by Andy Weir. So the plot of this book is about an astronaut who wakes up in the middle of space with no idea where he is and just a complete loss of memory. You get to go through the experience of recovering his memory, understanding his mission, and overall seeing what happens as a result of his mission throughout the book. Andy Weir, in case you haven't heard of him, is the author of the famous novel called The Martian, and he has done a lot of different sci-fi books in the past, and I've seen mixed reviews on them. Overall, I saw pretty high reviews with respect to Hail Mary, so I wanted to give it a shot. I finished this book in about 3 or 4 days after I got it, which for being a 500-page book is pretty good. Overall, I didn't find myself digging in super deep and analyzing all the corners and aspects of this book. It was just an engaging, lighthearted read for me. Now, this last book has been almost everywhere in the past year, and I'm sure you've heard of it, but it's called The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is the latest fiction read that I wrapped up, and it's about a fictional actress called Evelyn Hugo who is kind of the star and Marilyn Monroe of her time. She is ready to spill the secrets about her personal life to a particular journalist, and there's some interesting surprises and twists along the way. This was another amazingly quick read that I breezed through in maybe 2 days, and I loved every part of it. Again, it's one of those books that I kind of just engaged with on face value, and I really enjoyed reading it, and didn't try to read too much into the culture or value or anything like that. I think that Taylor Reid does a great job of integrating you into the story and feeling like you're right front and center of Evelyn Hugo, hearing the story from her. The chapters here are also pretty short, and the book is a great page turner, so it's hard to put down once you've really invested yourself into it. This is definitely more of an adult fiction book and really dives into the drama aspect of things, so if you love that kind of stuff, then this book is right up your alley. Those are the 6 books that I read this year that I really wanted to highlight and share with you all. I hope to continue reading more and more books next year, so hopefully I have a bigger and better list at the end of next year to share with you all. Thank you all so much for watching, happy holidays, happy new year, and I hope to see you all again next week for a brand new video. Bye.